What's up, guys? It's your boy Icy Boy Gamer here, back with another video. And in today's video, we are talking about the almighty thing, power scaling. As a matter of fact, how to actually properly power scale, because a bunch of people are doing it incorrectly and they're scaling it incorrectly. And it can actually work very well if you and the other person that you're power scaling against actually know how to properly power scale. For one, I'm going to just say this right now: do not scale by potential. As a car guy, it is a common thing, even in the car community, outside of like just anime and like superpower characters. In the car community, it is a very common thing for people to scale like engines like the 2JZ or the LS by potential. Do not scale by potential, because that is an endless argument that will never be found until you say, oh yeah, it's up to the writer. Which obviously everybody knows that, but we're not going to go by that because that's just a cheap way out. So, if you want to learn how to properly power scale, watch this video, pay it close attention, and you will see how to properly power scale. And if you want to, subscribe. I don't really say that in my videos, but you know what? It's time I say that. Subscribe. And so, let's get into this. Okay, so I know a bunch of you may wonder, so how do you power scale? Like, how do you properly do it? First off, there's two different types of power scaling. Inverse power scaling, which is two characters that are in the same universe and go by the same logic. And outverse power scaling, two characters that are in two different universes and you're putting them up against each other. First, we're going to start with outverse scaling, because it's more difficult and you have to actually come into an agreement with the person you're going up against. Now, I know you may be wondering, what is that other agreement? I call it universal evening, or aka it's like a balance. A balance between two universes that they can agree upon when it comes to two topics that basically converge and collide that don't work out. For example, One Piece has Haki, Naruto has chakra. And as you clearly see, in order to destroy somebody like a Logia user, you either have to have the elemental weakness or you have to have Haki. Now, of course, that's not really going to work unless you have something like Universal Erasure, which a bunch of anime do. And otherwise than that, let's say if your anime doesn't have Universal Erasure, but you're confident that this person could be the Logia user, it's just they can't injure them. Well, you got to come up with a way for you and the person that you're going up against to basically even the scale, like, to give it a good ideal to, be fair in a way, so that the battle can actually, make somewhat sense. Because, like, we know, oh yeah, this person could speed blitz a Kainu or something like that, for example. But can they injure a Kainu? No, they can't, because of Logias. And actually, what I like to say is that there is a very clear example of a game out there that actually does universe evening very well, and that is Jump Force. As you know, and if you watch One Piece or kept up on like some information on it and stuff like that, Luffy cannot be injured by normal attacks. It either has to be Haki, or it used to actually be fire. But Luffy, well, as his awakening in his true devil fruit, which I'm not going to tell anybody about because that is spoilers. But basically, how do I say this? He does not have a weakness to fire anymore, really. And so that basically leaves him at really two weaknesses: Haki, or if you stretch him to the point where, there's nothing he can do. Because he does have a limit on his stretching, especially if you watch Whole Cake Island. Okay, so now that we have outverse, like, type battles and stuff like that out the way, we're going to talk about inverse battles. Now, inverse battles is pretty simple. It's when you take two characters who are just, in the same verse, have the same power systems and stuff like that, up against each other. And now, inverse battles are usually easier, especially if, like, people pay attention to the story, which I hope so. But, how do I say this? One very conflicting, I hate to keep on, like, bringing up, like, just simple, like, main anime, but Naruto. One thing that is painful is that Naruto split into three different parts. First gen Naruto, which is basically just OG Naruto, Kid Naruto. Then Shippuden. And then Boruto.
I beg your
The
pardon?
problem with Boruto is that a lot of people don't watch it because they hate the show. But if you actually pay attention to the show, and you actually pay attention to the powers, the system, and the scaling and stuff like that, you realize that Boruto characters are just stronger than people in Shippuden. For the most part, let's be honest. Let's be truthful. And how do I say this? There are a good amount of Boruto characters that will definitely defeat a good amount of Shippuden characters. And that's just a fact. Whether you like it or not. I used to not like it. I got into Boruto. It was alright. It was alright. Not gonna be bad. But how do I say this? That's really all there is to it. Just inverse what you call it. Now, if the person, okay, quick stating, because I just now realized, you know what? I almost forgot about this. If you're in a scaling, like, debate against somebody, and they say, like, after you type, like, a whole paragraph or something with information and backed up evidence, and they say, I ain't reading all that, don't even debate with them. Because at that point, then that means that they're just there to be either a clown or they're really just not going to listen to you. So, yeah, you don't want to just, sit there and debate against somebody and they just don't care. So, how do I say this? We're done with that. Next up, we have tiering. And first off, you have powers, like, you got hacks, strength, speed. I'm going to start with speed because speed is very important. And I don't get why people mistake this so much. But it's just honestly funny to me how many people mistake this. So I'm pretty sure you guys know My Hero Academia, right? If you watch anime. I'm pretty sure you know Deku. Now, in the My Hero Academia movie, and the third movie, and I believe in the manga, Deku has dodged laser beams. And now, sadly, since you see that, a common misconception in just fiction in general is that every single type of laser beam you see moves at the speed of light. That is not true. Because I'm going to tell you right now, it's made of plasma. You want to know what's else made of plasma but not the speed of light? Lightning. Yes. So that means that although it is plasma, it is technically a beam, it is not the speed of light. Those lasers could probably be going a few 100 miles an hour at most. Even maybe like a few 1,000 miles an hour. But they are not going at the speed of light. So Deku is not light speed. I don't even know where people got that from. I just think that's a very odd misconception that just needs to be closed right then and there. Okay, so now that we got that out the way, I'm going to do destruction tiers. So now, what people don't realize is with the destruction tier, there's two different types of ways to it. Because, how do I say this? You can be planetary without being a planet buster. And this has even been shown in Dragon Ball Z. This has been shown in anime, in a bunch of different anime. How do I say this? So let's say you have a special type of power, right? Where it basically just not really blows up the planet, obviously, but it just turns everything about the planet into lava. That's planetary. It's just not planet busting. Planet busting is when you just eradicate an entire planet. But being planetary is when you can destroy a planet. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to explode it like in Dragon Ball or something. You can just destroy it. And so that's actually one of the reasons why many people actually conclude that Naruto characters, One Piece characters, and a bunch of other powerful characters are planet level, And so it makes a lot of sense because you can have that power to just destroy the planet, but you may not be able to put the planet at a vaporization type level. There's actually a different type of scaling for the different ways of destroying a planet. You got atomization, vaporation, it's just a bunch of scaling and stuff like that. But I just wanted to explain that and get that out the way. For Dragon Ball fans who may say, but has Naruto destroyed a planet or blown up a planet and stuff like that, or just stupid stuff like that. Of course, one common thing that comes in as a problem with tiering and stuff are people's own biases towards a character. Because there are a bunch of strong characters out there that are just stupidly strong, but they get heavily biased against because of, let's say, a certain dislike for this character or the love of the other character more than this character. A very common example being Enel or Inaru and Sakura. Those are two characters that are actually very strong, but when put up against somebody in their respective verse who everybody likes more, they just get bashed on. For example, Sakura versus Itachi. A lot of people actually think that Itachi beats Sakura. And I'm not talking about Ito Itachi, even though I could. I'm not talking about Ito Itachi. I'm talking about Itachi when he was alive. Fun fact, adult Sakura, and by the way, I'm just using adult Sakura as an example. Adult Sakura is basically, how do I say this? She can't get hit by Genjutsu. She is that Genjutsu resistant. So yeah, fun fact, by the way. But for example, I remember I saw a video on Enel versus Ace. I don't know who the YouTuber was. I forgot who it was. but he said it wasn't even close. And to be fair, being honest, Ace could beat Enel. Well, actually, he can, probably. Because he has shown way better feats, way better speed feats. But here's a little bit of a problem. Two things. Outflaming. This is literally one of the reasons that Ace died, besides hockey. How do I say this? Akainu's flame was hotter than Ace's. Fun fact. Lightning is hotter than fire. How else do you think when lightning strikes, fire just combusts? Think about it. But getting back on a serious note, how do I say this? And now, a lot of people don't pay attention because I feel like 90%, not 90%, but I'll say a solid 50% weren't really watching Skypiea. Enel is also island level. So one thing, speaking of that, yeah, Enel is also island level because he planned on destroying the island. That was his whole goal. And that was literally what he was going to do. And so that just gave me an idea. Now we're on to the next segment. Collaborative feats. And now this is one thing that gets on my nerves is when I'm watching like people scale and they use a collaborative feat for one person. For example, Ace versus Whitebeard. Oh my god, I can't believe I just said that. Ace versus Blackbeard. When they both clash, it destroyed the island. Of course, right? Everybody knows that. But it was a collaborative fleet. If we look back at that island was a pretty medium-sized island. And when they clashed, it was a collaborative effort. Which means one person had half of that island, the other person had the other half of the island. So it was technically half of a medium island level, and that is kind of complex. So we'll just say it was half an island level. So we can kind of, not really, obviously, null and void that feat. That was still a hugely impressive feat, obviously. But, yeah. So I wouldn't want to see people saying, Ace destroyed the whole island, when he didn't. It was a collaborative feat. Another collaborative feat that people always talk about is when Goku versus Beerus. They're always like, oh yeah, Goku, he almost destroyed the universe and stuff like that. No, he didn't. What happened was they had an uneven amount of power dished out. Of course, at this time, Beerus is stronger than him. And so Goku had to find a way to easily get to the level of Beerus and smoothing out basically their punches. Because if they didn't, obviously, the universe kaboom. It was a collaborative feat between the both of them punching at even paces, at even lengths, and even angles in order for him to basically just not blow up the universe. It wasn't just Goku. It wasn't just Beerus. It was the both of them. On top of that, another common misconception, speaking of Goku, is a lot of people don't realize Goku is still immortal. Yes, he's kind of, if not one of the strongest mortals in anime history. There could be a few characters stronger than him. I'm not sure. But he is one of the strongest mortals in anime history, being honest, and I'm pretty sure everybody knows that. Even I know that. And how do I say this? People forget about immortal beings that are just stupidly strong. There are so many immortal beings that can just wipe away with Goku. Matter of fact, like for example, there are Pokemon out there that can beat Goku. I'm not even joking about that one. Look at Arceus' track record. You will see how powerful that dude is. He can easily wipe the floor with Goku by just probably sneezing. Similar to Beerus. But speaking of Dragon Ball, because I just want to, nitpick at the little incidents that I've seen throughout my time of just scrolling on YouTube, looking at people debate, and I find it kind of hilarious. Zeno. People really think that Zeno is this almighty being that could basically just erase everybody. Fun fact. And I kind of hate basically bringing him up, because anytime you bring him up, there's basically no way to defeat him. The one above all. He can depower people. Yes, he can literally power people. Even though there are a few characters that are potentially stronger than him, they're also in the same verse, by the way. Howard the Duck, Miranda. If you don't know who Miranda is, she's a very powerful X-Men that I believe, the one above all can't even take away her powers, which is pretty insane. Making her one of, if not the strongest character out there in fiction. Thinking about it, does that make her the strongest character in fiction? I mean, if she can't break the fourth wall, then that doesn't make her the strongest. But you guys see what I mean. She's very powerful. Speaking of debate topics, another topic and about breaking the fourth wall and stuff like that, Toon Force. A bunch of people believe that every single Toon Force character is this almighty being that cannot be stopped. Of course, there are very OP Toon Force characters like SpongeBob, sometimes Gumball. But the problem is, Gumball, out of like all of the people with Toon Force, Gumball, he's not that strong, being honest. And that's only if he has access to the universal remote. But even then, we haven't really seen him use it that well. And he doesn't really have that much experience. So, honestly, how do I say this? Gumball, he can be beat by a lot of people. And a bunch of people also bring up like the Super Saiyan Gumball moment, which he literally did nothing with that. He just turned Super Saiyan. That's it. And people overhyped the mess out of that. I find that kind of weird. But for another character, SpongeBob, one of my favorite characters that people bring up in debates. He is, how do I say this? He's universal. He's actually around the same level as Zeno, I would say. Because his biggest feat is, untying the And by the way, I'm doing this by their highest versions. Obviously, Gumball with the universal remote is universal. But, of course, without it, he's fodder. Which is a word I don't really like using, and I always wondered, what did that word come from? Out of nowhere. You just see a debate, and then somebody's like, he's fodder.
Bruh.
But getting back on topic, it's just like, with the universal remote, he doesn't have that much experience, so he can be defeated by a good amount of characters, even with the remote. And I'm talking about characters that are weaker than universal. It's just, he doesn't usually use the remote well. And the same thing with SpongeBob. SpongeBob, how it really happened was more of a Toon episode and stuff like that. I don't really like scaling Toon Force because obviously it's for fun. It's just supposed to be jokes. But, the SpongeBob Unravel the Universe thing, that makes him universal. He's also went out of the story, became the writer of his own story, that type of stuff. That makes him basically probably multiversal, depending. But we'll just keep it at universal because, you don't want to overhype stuff and get people riled up. But, how do I say this? What's another thing on my mind? Okay, so another thing on my mind, and I'm actually surprised I have not gotten to him yet. Saitama, please stop saying that he wipes the floor with everybody because we do not know his powers. And again, this is coming from what I literally said on like the first few minutes of the videos. Do not scale by potential. Yes, he may be potentially infinitely stronger and stuff like that than many characters, but that's just potentially. We haven't seen that yet. So what you gotta do is use from his strongest point that has been clearly seen, which is in the manga, the latest chapter of the manga or whatever, or the latest feat that he had or whatever. And then that's what you write your powers off of. Also, another thing, Saitama is not immortal to everything. Just because he can punch and has high amounts of durability and speed does not mean that he is basically invincible to universal erasure. He can still be erased easily by universal erasure. Also, one thing I recommend is to not really use live action characters unless it's like a actual given shown feat. Because one problem with live action that I feel like they don't have down packed yet is speed. They're showing a bunch of universal feats, a bunch of insane fights, but yet the characters still move very slow. Like they're just reaching the speed of sound or something, which I always find kind of odd. But otherwise than that, that's all I gotta say. Just power scale fairly. Icy Boy Gaming, out. Boom.